What's up, fight fans? This is Kurt DeVille with Counter Punch Boxing News, and I have some new news concerning Lennox Lewis, big up England, and Anthony Joshua. And get this, Lennox states that Anthony Joshua needs to come back to the United States to redeem himself. And he also said this. He said, right now, Joshua is a big fish swimming in a little pond. They are using the model that the Klitschko's had in Germany and applying it to England. He said, I'm not mad at that, but even the Klitschko brothers fought in other countries. As a world champion, he has to come out of his comfort zone. He says, I don't blame him for being leery about coming to America, especially if you go by the bad judging decisions that has happened there in so many fights. But at some point, if he wants to achieve a world box office status, he will have to fight in front of the audiences outside the UK. Now, he says more, okay, but let me cover this part that I've read, okay. He has a point with Joshua having to come back to the States. He does need to come back to the States. He needs to come over here and successfully win, and by winning, defend the belts that he has. Okay, that's one thing. I would actually, coming to the States, Madison Square Garden, he should go where it started. You know, there is no shame of taking a loss, but it's a bad look if Anthony Joshua never returns to the U.S. Now, he says that he will, but then when? That's the question. When will he come back? Now, I'm not one of the ones that believed in Lennox Lewis's comments before. I never believed AJ had to come to the U.S. to become this and that. Okay, that's Lewis's journey. That's his path that he took, that he believed like, hey, I need to do this. Like Tyson Fury had to come over here to achieve that. Well, the unique thing about Joshua, he never had to do that. Okay, he never had to go through the route of coming over here and achieving something just to go back, you know, to say, hey, I've made it. No, he's already made it over there. He's already the highest paid boxer over there, if not anywhere. Okay, so if you're making $85 million in Saudi Arabia, or you're making 35 in Madison Square Garden, or you're making 25 million pounds in the UK, and you're selling out 90,000 arena, and you're breaking records, you do not have to come over here. So I didn't agree with what Lennox Lewis said, and I think Lennox Lewis was trying to base himself or base Joshua on what he did in the sport. And what Lennox Lewis did in the sport was spectacular. Okay, was extraordinary. The things that he did. He's the best fighter over that it came from the UK, if you ask me. Okay, but Joshua, the popularity that he had, the endorsements, he had it all there. Okay, England became the mecca, okay, of boxing, especially when you had that type of success and someone doing numbers like Joshua was doing. Okay, even the Andy Ruiz broke numbers over there through pay-per-view. You know, even when he came over here finally, they broke numbers, they broke records. But of course, a lot of confusion because the opponents changed and all that, and we know all this, right? So I'm not for that. However, I have to agree with Lennox Lewis because Anthony Joshua did decide to come over here. And when he came over here, he took an L. He took his first L. It was a big upset. It was embarrassing. Think about it. What does people say? Even Joshua will say it himself. Yeah, I got beat, the chubby little Mexican. You know, they say I got beat this chubby little Mexican, right? But you know, it's embarrassing. You got a big colossus built dude gets beat by a short pudgy cat like that. It was like people did not believe what they were saying. They were like, oh, you know, Eddie Hearn. Eddie's, oh God, what happened? You know what I mean? So yeah, he is absolutely true. Now, when he talks about the Klitschko's, even they fought in other countries. Again, Joshua's fought in 3 different countries now. He's fought in the States. He's fought in the UK, of course, where he's from. And then he fought in Saudi Arabia. So that counters what he's talking about there. Now, I'm going to go on about with this. He said, the funny thing is that Joshua may truly be the best of the bunch, but we won't know until he starts talking sense for the event fighters. I understand that promoters must have a plan mapped out for the fighters, and Eddie Hearn has done well by Joshua up to now, but at some point you have to stop milking the cow. Let him do what bulls do. It's also on the fighter to take the bull by the horn and say, make this fight. That's how legacies get built. If that doesn't happen, then we know that it's just about milking the British fans for as much money as possible instead of bringing the undisputed heavyweight championship of the world back home to them for the second time in their lifetime. Just that simple, Lennox Lewis said. Now, let me counterpunch. Lennox Lewis, again, he made a good point. Okay. At some point, being a fighter, you have to tell the promoter, get me this fight. I don't care what it takes. Get me this fight. Okay. And this is something that Lennox Lewis done. That's why he knows. He's not speaking from a situation where he knows nothing about. Lennox Lewis knows exactly what it's like or what to do to make legacy fights happen. If it wasn't for Lennox Lewis, he wouldn't have not ever fought Evander Holyfield. Why? Because Evander Holyfield wanted to give him a flat rate. But you know what Lennox Lewis did? Lennox Lewis took it. Okay? But here's the problem. Lennox Lewis wasn't Anthony Joshua in that situation. Anthony Joshua was Evander Holyfield. And Evander Holyfield offered him $10 million, and he took it. Just like Wilder should have taken it, but he didn't. Okay? Since he's somewhat of a mentor for Deontay Wilder, like he pretends to be for AJ, okay? He should advise Deontay Wilder his path, what he done in the sport to make legacy. Because if it wasn't for him, we would have never saw the fight. And when I mean him, I'm talking about Lennox Lewis. Okay? So at what point did that have anything to do with Holyfield? So why would you blame Holyfield for making an offer to Lennox Lewis that Lennox Lewis decided not to take? But in his case, he decided to take. Okay? He took that offer. He didn't have to. But if he didn't take the offer, you can't go back and say, hey, you know what? Holyfield ducked me. Holyfield's a coward. Holyfield ain't got a heart of a champion. Holyfield, I'm glad he lost. Holyfield ain't nothing. Holyfield's whole thing has been based off lies. You can't say that at that point because you decided not to take the money. Just like Deontay Wilder decided not to take the money that was in front of him. Several times. Several times. Not just one. Several times. But if you can only compare the one negotiation from the 12.5 compared to the 10 million that Lennox Lewis took flat rate, right? Lennox Lewis took it, Deontay Wilder didn't. So this is actually backwards. Lennox Lewis should be talking more about Deontay Wilder than what Anthony Joshua should do. Or what he could do, he could discuss why Holyfield should have offered him more money. But he can't do that because he turns into a hypocrite because he knew he took the money. And then at that point, it makes no sense. Like, oh, I think Holyfield should have gave me more money. But you took it because you knew you wanted that fight. You knew you were better than Holyfield. You knew that you wanted to be the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. And you knew there was no fucking way that the A side was going to bow down to you. Counterpunch. But anyway, you guys tell me what you think about this video between Lennox Lewis and Anthony Joshua. Of course, please subscribe. And you guys been Counterpunch. Peace.